Hey guys, tonight we begin with a light so fierce that even the desert itself seemed to recoil. You stand there, in the chill of early morning, July 16th, 1945. The sky above the Jornada del Muerto Valley of New Mexico is black velvet before dawn, until a sudden flash turns night into white-hot day. A roaring fireball blooms upward, so bright it burns an image into your retinas even behind dark goggles. A wave of heat slams into your skin, and seconds later, a thunderclap rolls across the desert floor. The sand under your boots fuses into glass. That instant, humanity steps into a new era, the nuclear age. And you, standing among trembling scientists, realize that mankind has just learned how to unmake itself. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The flash you just witnessed came from something nicknamed Gadget. Not a sleek device or comic prop. This was the first atomic bomb ever detonated. A sphere of plutonium and explosive lenses carefully assembled by hands that shook with both pride and fear. The device proved that a plutonium fission detonation was possible, that one could split atoms in a way that wouldn't instantly ignite the atmosphere or melt the planet, though that nightmare had haunted more than a few of its creators. Scientists called it the Trinity test, a poetic name for something so apocalyptic. Some accounts say J. Robert Oppenheimer murmured a line from the Bhagavad Gita, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." Whether he truly said it aloud or not, the phrase became legend, equal parts awe and regret. You can almost hear it echoing faintly in the desert wind. Let's rewind time. You're not yet at Los Alamos or watching shockwaves. You're a curious observer in a different century, before the world even knew what an atom could do. Imagine walking through a 19th century laboratory cluttered with glass tubes, faintly glowing minerals, and notebooks smudged with graphite and coffee stains. Here, Henri Becquerel accidentally leaves a uranium sample on photographic plates and discovers strange, invisible rays that fog them. Nearby, Marie and Pierre Curie obsess over these glowing rocks, isolating new elements, polonium and radium, that emit their own light. They don't realize that the gentle glow in the dark is silently damaging their health. Marie Curie, by the way, carried test tubes of radium in her pockets like good luck charms. She'd show them to visitors at parties. "Look how it shines," a quirky bit of radioactive show and tell that historians still shake their heads about. And yet, her courage lit the path to a new science, radioactivity. Historians still argue whether the Curies truly grasped how dangerous their discoveries were, or whether optimism and pride blinded them to risk. Over the decades, other researchers built on their work. Ernest Rutherford famously fired alpha particles at a sheet of gold foil and discovered that atoms have tiny, dense centers, nuclei. The atom wasn't indivisible after all. It had structure, potential, and secrets to unlock. By the 1930s, physicists like Niels Bohr and Lisa Meitner began exploring how these atomic hearts might be split. And in 1938, in a lab in Berlin, Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann bombarded uranium with neutrons and realized it broke into lighter elements, an event Meitner correctly interpreted as nuclear fission. You might picture that moment like a spark in the world's quietest tinderbox. The news spread among scientists with a mixture of disbelief and dread. If each split atom released energy and more neutrons, triggering others, then you could have a chain reaction. Some thought of it as a potential energy source. Others, more ominously, as a weapon beyond imagination. A quirky tidbit from those early days, one rumor claimed that the first fission bomb might ignite Earth's atmosphere, burning nitrogen in a runaway reaction. The odds were calculated as infinitesimally small, but not zero. Imagine standing in the desert counting down to zero, knowing that one miscalculation could make sunrise a permanent condition. That's commitment, or madness. As the fireball climbs over the desert, mushrooming higher than any storm cloud, you feel the contradiction in your chest, the triumph of human intellect and the terror of what it has unleashed. Around you, the scientists cheer and weep. Some laugh from sheer release, others stand silent. They've done the impossible, but at what cost? The shockwave reaches the observation bunkers miles away, rattling windows and shaking notebooks from tables. The test site had been chosen for isolation, hence the eerie name Journey of the Dead Man. Yet the light was seen from more than 200 miles away. A nearby rancher later described thinking the world was ending. Maybe, in some sense, he wasn't wrong. In that instant, atomic theory became atomic reality. All the equations scribbled on chalkboards in Cambridge, Copenhagen, and Chicago suddenly had consequences measured not in millijoules, but in megatons. Humanity had tapped into the same energy that powers stars. And as with any star, there was both warmth and annihilation waiting in its core. Your ears are still ringing when you notice how the sand at ground zero has fused into a glassy mineral called trinitite, pale green and sharp to the touch. Souvenir hunters will someday sneak pieces of it home, not realizing they're mildly radioactive. Another quirky twist of fate, some of that glass later ended up in jewelry sold to tourists, fashion accessories born from Armageddon. Historians still argue whether the Trinity test was truly necessary before Hiroshima or whether the US already had enough confidence in the bomb's design. But the test's symbolic weight was undeniable. It proved the concept and marked the moment the nuclear age became irreversible. As the glow fades and silence returns to the desert, the implications begin to settle in. The scientists drive back to base in stunned quiet, their headlights carving pale tunnels through the dust. One of them jokes weakly about needing a suntan lotion made of lead. Another murmurs that they've opened Pandora's box, and no one laughs. Yet even here, amid ashes and moral vertigo, you can't help but feel the gravitational pull of curiosity. The atom's secret has been revealed, and curiosity doesn't go back into its cage. Within weeks, teams at Los Alamos begin assembling the next bombs, Fat Man and Little Boy, while governments draft new doctrines for war and peace. Still, the dawn after Trinity wasn't just about destruction. The same principles could light cities, power ships, cure diseases, even send spacecraft beyond Earth's orbit. The atom, it seemed, was neither friend nor foe, just power, waiting for direction. You look once more toward the horizon where the fireball had been. The sky is still faintly bruised, a memory of brilliance fading into blue. Somewhere out there, a handful of glass shards glimmer in the sand, catching the first sunlight. And you realize this story, our story, isn't only about bombs. It's about knowledge, risk, and responsibility. The atom doesn't choose what we do with it. We do. You blink and the glow of the desert fades into the amber flicker of gas lamps and the scratch of fountain pens. The world has rewound itself by half a century. You're now standing in a cramped 19th century lab, the kind that smells faintly of iodine, burnt dust, and chalk. Shelves sag beneath rows of glass bottles with strange handwritten labels. Pitch blende, uranium oxide, barium chloride. The air hums softly with the sound of discovery. It's 1896, and a French physicist named Henri Becquerel is puzzled by something that refuses to behave. He's been experimenting with phosphorescent salts, materials that glow after exposure to sunlight, when a stubbornly cloudy day interrupts his plans. So, absent-mindedly, he tosses the uranium crystals into a drawer along with a few wrapped photographic plates and forgets about them. Days later, when he develops the plates, he finds ghostly images burned into them, yet the minerals had never seen light. Invisible rays emanating from matter itself had etched their mark. You'd probably drop the film and swear you'd discovered ghosts. Becquerel, being a scientist, called them radiations. But he couldn't have imagined that this quiet moment of serendipity would birth an entire century of atomic obsession. Soon after, a pair of Polish-French researchers pick up the trail. Marie and Pierre Curie, husband and wife, hunched over tables piled with ore so heavy it creaks the wood. They labor day after day, boiling and filtering tons of pitchblende in cauldrons, searching for the mysterious source of Becquerel's rays. Their apartment becomes a symphony of steam, acid, and exhaustion. The neighbors probably think they're making soup, just a particularly glowing one. At last, they isolate two new elements: polonium, named after Marie's homeland, and radium, a substance so luminous it paints the darkness with pale blue light. You imagine holding a tiny vial of that shimmering dust, mesmerizing, deadly, and beautiful. The Curies had no protective gear. Marie often carried samples in her pockets like Lucky Charms. Historians still argue whether she knew the risks or simply refused to let caution dim her curiosity. Either way, her notebooks are still radioactive today, stored in lead-lined boxes in Paris, glowing with the handwriting of discovery. It's strange to think that from these dim, flickering laboratories came the roots of both nuclear medicine and nuclear warfare. Back then, radioactivity wasn't yet a word to fear. It was a symbol of progress, miraculous, healing, almost magical. Factories made radium creams and glow tonics. People painted their watch dials so they'd shine in the dark. Entire radium spas opened, promising vitality through mild irradiation. A fringe tidbit: one company even sold radium-infused toothpaste. Yes, brushing your teeth with atomic energy was once the height of sophistication. But amid the glow, sharp minds were probing deeper. Around 1911, Ernest Rutherford, the same man who had once been Curie's student, performed an experiment that changed everything. He fired alpha particles at a thin sheet of gold foil and watched as some bounced back. It was as if you fired a 15-inch shell at tissue paper and it came back to hit you, he later remarked. From that strange result, Rutherford deduced that atoms aren't solid spheres, but mostly empty space, with dense nuclei at their centers. Inside those nuclei, something immense was coiled, energy waiting to be released. By the 1920s and 30s, scientists across Europe were racing to decode this atomic heart. Niels Bohr's quantum model described electrons orbiting the nucleus like planets, while physicists like James Chadwick discovered the neutron, that neutral ghost capable of sliding into nuclei unnoticed. Each revelation felt like peeling back another layer of nature's armor. Then came Lisa Meitner and Otto Hahn in Berlin, 1938. Bombarding uranium with neutrons, they expected tiny adjustments in its mass. What they got was catastrophe on the atomic scale. The uranium nucleus had split into smaller elements, releasing vast energy. Meitner, working in exile after fleeing Nazi Germany, realized the enormity of it. The atom could divide itself, and in doing so, unleash the power of the stars. Her nephew, physicist Otto Frisch, dubbed it fission, borrowing the word from biology. You can almost feel the air thicken in Meitner's Austrian ski cabin as she scribbles calculations on a napkin, realizing what this means. Energy from nothing, or rather, from everything. News of fission traveled across the globe faster than a chain reaction. Some scientists saw salvation, limitless, clean energy. Others saw annihilation. Historians still debate the moral crossroad of that winter. If, without the looming war, humanity might have taken a gentler path toward nuclear power. But with Europe burning, Theoretical elegance quickly gave way to military urgency. One amusing footnote. In 1939, when Albert Einstein signed the letter to President Roosevelt warning that Nazi Germany might build an atomic bomb, he was actually on vacation in Long Island. The letter, typed by physicist Leo Szilárd, took months to reach the White House because Roosevelt's staff didn't understand what it meant. Bureaucracy, as it turns out, moves slower than neutrons. Still, that letter set in motion the Manhattan Project, a sprawling enterprise that would eventually summon thousands of scientists, engineers, and soldiers to secret sites scattered across America. But before we get there, before Los Alamos, before Hiroshima, there's one more stop. The basement of the University of Chicago, December 1942. A squash court repurposed into a makeshift laboratory. You descend the wooden stairs into the dim space where a black graphite stack looms like an ancient ziggurat. At its heart, uranium slugs, arranged with precision, layer by layer. Enrico Fermi and his team stand ready, slide rules in hand, Geiger counters ticking. They call it Chicago Pile 1, the world's first nuclear reactor. You stand with them, holding your breath as the control rods inch outward. Each movement releases more neutrons. Each neutron triggers more fissions, the reaction doubling, then doubling again. Fermi's calm voice cuts through the tension. The reaction is self-sustaining. The men shake hands quietly. No explosion, no flash, just the steady hum of controlled power. Humanity has lit its first artificial star, and this time, it stays in a box. It's a humble scene compared to the Trinity fireball, but don't underestimate its magnitude. From this quiet experiment flow two rivers, one of destruction, one of creation. Civilian power plants, nuclear medicine, naval reactors, all owe their lineage to that pile of graphite and uranium beneath the stands of Stagg Field. A quirky historical footnote. The control rods of Chicago Pile 1 were driven by a literal rope. A man named George Weil held it, ready to yank the rods back in if things went wrong. His role, essentially, was the human off switch. Later, someone joked that his job description could be summarized as, "Don't let the planet catch fire." Historians still argue whether Fermi's experiment marked the first moment of true control over atomic power or merely the illusion of it. After all, that same principle would soon be weaponized at incomprehensible scales. But for a brief, flickering instant, the atom served not war, but wonder. You glance around the dim lab. No crowds, no applause, just exhausted men and women realizing they've stepped into a future no one fully understands. The heat from the graphite stack warms your face. The Geiger counter ticks steadily like a heartbeat. Somewhere above, students play squash, unaware that beneath their feet, the universe has quietly changed forever. And as you climb back into the night air, you feel it too, the faint, unseen glow of possibility. You step out of that dim Chicago basement and into the blinding light of the early atomic age. The war is raging, the world's nerves are frayed, and scientists everywhere feel the tremor of Fermi's success. You can almost hear the tick of Geiger counters echoing across continents as physicists begin asking one simple question: what if we could make it bigger? Before long, laboratories from Copenhagen to Cambridge hum with the same uneasy excitement. You're standing now in one of them, metal tables gleaming under bright lamps, the smell of ozone sharp in the air. Chalkboards crowd the walls with equations that look like coded prayers. E equals mc squared, n plus u235 arrow b a141 plus kr92 plus 3n plus energy. It's the dawn of the atomic arms race before the race even has a name. But to understand the mania that follows, you need to know how deceptively simple fission actually is. Picture an atom of uranium as a miniature solar system, its dense nucleus orbited by electrons too small to imagine. When a neutron, a tiny, uncharged bullet, hits that nucleus just right, the whole thing snaps apart like an overwound spring. 2 smaller atoms burst free, and in the process, they release a torrent of energy and more neutrons, which immediately seek out new targets. 1 split becomes 3, 3 become 9, and suddenly, you're in a feedback loop of destruction. Now multiply that by trillions, and you have the makings of a weapon, or, depending on your optimism level, an energy source powerful enough to light a city. Historians still argue whether this discovery was inevitable or accidental, whether humanity would have cracked the atom sooner or later, or whether it took the desperation of global war to push curiosity over the moral edge. But by 1942, that debate was irrelevant. The fuse had been lit. You follow that spark to a small mesa in New Mexico, a place so isolated that rattlesnakes outnumber people. It's called Los Alamos. There, under tight secrecy, the world's leading scientists gather to transform fission from theory into weapon. They call themselves the Gadgeteers, though what they're building will soon be known by darker names. You meet Oppenheimer, the reluctant visionary with a poet's heart and a physicist's brain. You meet Leo Szilárd, the man whose imagination sparked the project, but who now loses sleep over its implications. Richard Feynman is there too, wisecracking, brilliant, occasionally playing bongos to stay sane. The atmosphere is equal parts excitement and dread. One moment, someone's calculating neutron flux. The next, they're wondering if they're making a weapon to end all wars or just the world itself. A quirky tidbit. To test early implosion models, they built elaborate wooden spheres and filled them with TNT, then accidentally blew one to pieces in a parking lot. Another time, someone miscalculated the mass of plutonium in a test setup, and the resulting radiation spike nearly sterilized half the lab. Physicists, it turns out, are human. You watch them wrestle with math, politics, and sleepless nights. Each new breakthrough carries the thrill of mastery and the guilt of what mastery might mean. Fermi's chain reaction has become the blueprint for apocalypse, but no one can quite bring themselves to stop. Meanwhile, across the ocean, Europe is in ruins. Hitler's army is retreating, but rumors persist that Germany too is pursuing an atomic bomb. Every day the Allies' delay feels like a day closer to defeat, or so they tell themselves. And so the Manhattan Project grows, consuming budgets, manpower, and moral clarity by the ton. Entire secret cities spring up. Oak Ridge, Hanford, places so classified that even their own workers often don't know what they're making. At Los Alamos, you sit in a cramped barracks, scribbling notes under the hum of a flickering bulb. There's talk of 2 bomb designs, one using uranium. Oppenheimer's voice is tired but steady. We can do this. You can tell he's convincing himself as much as anyone. By 1945, the work is nearly done. The war in Europe is over. Hitler is dead. But in the Pacific, Japan fights on. Plans are drawn to use the new weapon not as deterrent, but as demonstration. They test Gadget first, just to be sure. And that's the moment you've already seen. The Trinity test. The fireball. The desert turned to glass. What comes next is both history and heartbreak. August 6th, 1945. You stand aboard the Enola Gay, a B-29 bomber humming high above the sleeping city of Hiroshima. Below, children walk to school, street vendors set up their stalls, and no one looks up. The bomb falls silently for 43 seconds before detonating at 8:15 a.m. The light is instant, all-consuming. Temperatures near the center soar to millions of degrees. Shadows burn themselves onto walls where bodies once stood. A single bomb releases the energy of 15,000 tons of TNT. 90% of the city vanishes. Tens of thousands die instantly. Tens of thousands more in the days and years after, from burns, from collapse, from radiation. 3 days later, Nagasaki follows. The same flash, the same silence after the thunder. You float amid the smoke and ash, stunned, not by the destruction, but by the scale of what one idea, one reaction can do. Some survivors describe black rain falling from the sky, oily and radioactive, seeping into open wounds. Others recall paper cranes folded in hospital beds, tiny symbols of hope in a world that had run out of it. Historians still argue whether those bombings were necessary, whether Japan would have surrendered without them, whether the act saved millions or damned the conscience of humanity forever. There's no answer that feels clean. Even the scientists who built the bomb divided. Some justified it, others spent the rest of their lives campaigning against nuclear arms. One peculiar historical footnote: after Hiroshima, the physicists at Los Alamos held a party. Not out of celebration exactly, more like shock. They drank, argued, cried, and played music until dawn. Feynman later admitted that he sat outside under the stars, watching them with a kind of detached horror, realizing that every pinprick of light in the sky was now a reminder of what he'd helped imitate on Earth. The war ended, the world exhaled, and then it began holding its breath again. Because once the secret of the atom was out, it couldn't be contained. The Soviet Union knew it, so did Britain, France, and, soon, everyone else. Fission wasn't just a weapon, it was the key to power, prestige, survival. Within 4 years, another mushroom cloud would rise over a different desert, this time under a red flag. And from that moment on, the world would live under two suns, one that warmed and one that could incinerate. But for now, in the fading summer of 1945, you stand in the ruins of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, feeling the unbearable heat that lingers in the soil. The air is quiet, except for the soft hiss of radiation counters and the low hum of grief. You pick up a small piece of melted glass. Its surface rippled like water frozen mid-splash. It feels warm, even now, decades later. You slip it into your pocket, a fragment of the day humanity learned how fragile its own shadow could be. The war is over, but the world feels strangely restless, like a giant engine left idling. You stand in the ruins of peace, where the air still smells faintly of gunpowder and ozone. Nations begin to rebuild, but the ghost of Hiroshima hovers above them all, whispering a question no one wants to answer. What happens when everyone wants the same power? It doesn't take long to find out. You turn your gaze eastward. Moscow, August 29th, 1949. A flash erupts above the Kazakh steppe, as bright as the one that lit New Mexico 4 years before. The Soviets have detonated their first atomic bomb, codenamed RDS-1. The Americans call it Joe-1, after Joseph Stalin. The US monopoly on nuclear fire is over. The shock travels faster than the blast wave itself. Politicians in Washington stare at grainy aerial photos of the Soviet test site, realizing that the atomic genie has officially escaped the bottle. Scientists who once toasted peace now start drawing up contingency plans. You can almost hear the air between the two superpowers begin to hum with paranoia. Within weeks, American generals are revising defense doctrines. The talk shifts from never again to not first, but if we must. Fear becomes the fuel of progress. Laboratories buzz again, this time not with wonder, but with urgency. That urgency breeds invention. The atomic bomb, the fission bomb, is already old news. The next goal is to make something bigger. Enter the hydrogen bomb, a weapon not of splitting, but of fusing atoms. Instead of breaking uranium or plutonium apart, it forces lighter elements like hydrogen to merge, releasing energy the way stars do. It's like comparing a matchstick to a lightning bolt. The race begins. On one side, the United States with physicists like Edward Teller, nicknamed the father of the hydrogen bomb, though perhaps its most obsessed uncle would be fairer. On the other side, Soviet scientists led by Andrei Sakharov, equally brilliant, equally haunted. Both sides claim to defend peace, but their peace smells suspiciously like vaporized air. By 1952, the US conducts Ivy Mike, the world's first thermonuclear test. You watch it from a safe distance, or what they call a safe distance, on the tiny Pacific island of Eniwetok. The explosion vaporizes an entire atoll, leaving a crater 2 kilometers wide and 50 meters deep. Where coral once bloomed, there's now a bowl of molten glass. Scientists cheer. Soldiers blink through their goggles. Somewhere, a palm tree, the last one standing, bursts into flames. A quirky tidbit. One of the test's observation stations was shielded behind several feet of concrete and steel. After the blast, it was gone. The camera equipment had melted. The concrete had evaporated. That's not poetic exaggeration. That's physics in its most terrifyingly literal form. Historians still argue whether the hydrogen bomb was inevitable, whether once the Soviets had fission, the US had any choice but to go bigger. The ethical debate split even the scientific community. Oppenheimer himself opposed the super bomb, calling it a genocidal weapon. For that, he'd later be stripped of his security clearance, a symbolic excommunication from the very world he'd helped create. By 1955, the Soviets answer with their own hydrogen test. The Cold War now glows white hot. The world's 2 superpowers are like boxers in an arena of ice, fists raised, knowing that one punch could shatter everything. The arms race shifts into a fever dream of escalation. The United States builds Operation Castle Bravo, 1954, an experiment gone too right. The bomb yields 15 megatons, more than double expectations. The fireball swallows entire islands, and radioactive fallout drifts for hundreds of miles, dusting nearby Marshall Islanders in white ash they mistake for snow. The contamination spreads so far that a Japanese fishing boat, Lucky Dragon No. 5, catches the invisible poison. Its crew becomes sick within hours. One dies weeks later. The irony doesn't go unnoticed. A Japanese civilian dying again from an American nuclear blast nearly a decade after Hiroshima. That's when the protests begin. The first murmurs of anti-nuclear sentiment that will echo through generations. But governments keep testing. Between 1945 and 1996, humanity conducts over 2,000 nuclear detonations, some in deserts, others underwater, many in the sky, turning clouds into glowing murals of destruction. The Pacific Islands become laboratories of annihilation. Nevada deserts bloom with mushroom clouds visible from Las Vegas hotels. People watch them from balconies with sunglasses and cocktails. Humanity has a strange relationship with horror. It loves to look at it from a distance. Through the 1950s and 60s, the logic of deterrence hardens into doctrine. They call it MAD, mutually assured destruction. If one side launches, both perish. The only way to win is never to fight. It's a fragile piece, balanced on a hair trigger. You stand in a missile silo somewhere in the American Midwest. The walls hum faintly. The air smells of oil and cold metal. Beneath your boots, a Titan II intercontinental ballistic missile slumbers in its concrete coffin. The warhead atop it could vaporize an entire city. Half a world away, its twin in Siberia waits for the same signal. One wrong code, one faulty radar, and civilization could end before anyone finishes their morning coffee. A small quirky fact: during the 1960s, the US Air Force actually kept nuclear-armed bombers in the air around the clock. The idea was simple. No one could destroy all the weapons if they were always flying. Pilots nicknamed it Chrome Dome. Less poetic versions of the nickname cannot be repeated in polite company. Historians still debate whether MAD truly kept the peace or just postponed inevitable disaster. There were near misses. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, for example, when the world came within a hair's breadth of self-destruction. Kennedy and Khrushchev stared into the abyss, blinked, and backed away. But only barely. Then came 1961, and with it the most terrifying single explosion in human history, the Tsar Bomba. You stand on the ice of Novaya Zemlya, wrapped in heavy furs, your breath freezing in the air. The Soviet bomber above you releases a 27-ton bomb, a weapon so huge it barely fits inside the plane. At 11:32 a.m., the sky ignites. The blast yields over 50 megatons, equivalent to 1,570 Hiroshima bombs detonated at once. The fireball is visible 1,000 kilometers away. Windows shatter in Finland. The shockwave circles the globe 3 times. The mushroom cloud reaches 60 kilometers high, so tall it touches the edge of space. And yet, this monstrous weapon is deliberately half as strong as it could have been. Engineers capped its yield to avoid catastrophic fallout. Let that sink in. They made it smaller out of politeness. After the test, the Soviet physicist Sakharov, the man who designed it, writes in his diary that he feels both pride and horror. Soon after, he becomes one of the loudest voices for disarmament, realizing that power without restraint is just suicide with better marketing. You look around the frozen tundra, still shimmering with residual light. No one cheers this time. The soldiers just stare. Somewhere deep inside, the thrill of competition begins to curdle into fear. By the late 1960s, the world has enough nuclear weapons to destroy itself dozens of times over. Maps of the Earth are quietly redrawn, not by borders or empires, but by blast radii and fallout zones. The unthinkable becomes routine. Children in American schools practice duck and cover drills under their desks, as if plywood could save them from a son born on Earth. In the Soviet Union, the drills are the same, just with different slogans. The nuclear age has matured, if that's the right word for it. You might call it adolescence, brilliant, reckless, terrified of itself. Still, out of this madness comes structure. Treaties are signed. The Partial Test Ban Treaty, 1963. The Non-Proliferation Treaty, 1968. Scientists begin speaking at the United Nations instead of just labs. Even superpowers, it seems, can get tired of standing on cliffs. And yet, as you gaze at the silent missiles sleeping in their silos, the hum of reactors across continents, the faint glow of cities lit by nuclear energy, you realize something profound. Humanity has learned to live with its own extinction, comfortably, even casually. The fire that once turned deserts to glass now powers homes, submarines, and satellites. But the shadow of the mushroom cloud never quite leaves the horizon. You feel it still, like static in the air, waiting. You linger in that eerie twilight between fear and fascination, the glow of a power so immense that no one quite knows what to do with it. The 1950s give way to the 1960s, and the nuclear arms race becomes as routine as weather reports. You wake up every morning to headlines about missile tests, treaties, and new acronyms that all somehow mean the end of the world, but fancier. But here's the paradox. While the world stockpiles weapons capable of vaporizing civilization, it also begins dreaming of using the same energy to improve civilization. The atom, that tiny monster from the lab, starts getting a makeover. Politicians talk about atoms for peace. The same governments funding the arms race now promise a glowing future powered by the same force that leveled 2 cities. It's like a magician apologizing for cutting someone in half by offering to light your house for free. You find yourself attending one of those shiny new exhibitions in 1955, the Geneva Conference on Peaceful Uses of Atomic Energy. The hall is filled with clean-cut scientists and overly enthusiastic brochures. Models of gleaming reactors spin on pedestals. A polite voice from a loudspeaker assures visitors that nuclear power will soon provide limitless, clean electricity for everyone on Earth. You can almost hear the optimism, humming louder than the Geiger counters. One booth displays a miniature model of a nuclear-powered airplane, promising non-stop flight for years. Another touts nuclear trains, cars, and even toothbrushes. Yes, that was a real idea. A self-sterilizing toothbrush powered by radiation. Probably not recommended by dentists or anyone who likes having teeth. Historians still argue whether that optimism was naive or necessary. After all, people were exhausted by war, hungry for progress, and dazzled by the idea that humankind could now harness the same energy as the stars. Maybe you needed a little denial to sleep at night when you knew there were enough bombs in the world to vaporize the moon. Still, the promise of atomic energy was seductive. Nuclear power plants began to rise across the world. The first commercial one, Calder Hall in Britain, went online in 1956. The United States followed with Shippingport in 1958. The Soviet Union, France, Japan, all joined the glow. Engineers perfected the art of controlled fission, uranium fuel rods heating water to make steam, spinning turbines, generating electricity. Clean, efficient, and, at least on paper, safe. You stroll through one of these early facilities. The hum of turbines, the smell of metal and coolant, the quiet confidence of men in white lab coats. No smoke, no soot, no pollution, one engineer boasts, tapping a gauge like a proud parent. And he's not wrong. Compared to the smog-choked coal plants of the era, nuclear power looked like salvation. A quirky tidbit: the first nuclear-powered submarine, the USS Nautilus, launched in 1954. Its motto, "Underway on nuclear power." It could stay submerged for weeks, even months, without surfacing. Later came nuclear aircraft carriers, icebreakers, and even attempts at nuclear spacecraft. Humanity, it seemed, had finally figured out how to bottle a star, and was eager to use it for everything from lighting homes to exploring other planets. But as you walk deeper into that bright atomic age, you begin to sense a shadow forming behind the glow. For all its promise, nuclear power comes with one small, persistent problem: radioactive waste. Every reactor leaves behind spent fuel, tiny pellets that stay dangerously hot for tens of thousands of years. The brochures at Geneva don't mention that part. Historians still argue whether the industry downplayed those dangers out of ignorance or arrogance. Some scientists genuinely believed new technology would solve everything. Others suspected that admitting the risks might doom nuclear power before it began. So they pressed forward, burying the waste in barrels, in mines, even under the sea. The future, they assumed, could handle it. Then, there was the public's growing anxiety. Accidents were rare, but the thought of radiation leaking into air or water terrified people. It didn't help that early safety protocols were, let's say, casual. One lab in Idaho once released a radioactive cloud during an experiment, and the local authorities simply advised farmers to wash their cows. Still, the world's appetite for nuclear energy grew. By the 1970s, hundreds of reactors dotted the globe. They powered cities, factories, and even parts of the military grid. Nations that once feared the bomb now bragged about their reactors. Atomic energy had become a badge of modernity, proof you joined the club of advanced nations. But deep down, everyone knew it was a double-edged sword. The same knowledge that lit your cities could flatten them. The same isotopes that healed cancer could poison rivers. The same heat that powered submarines could melt through steel. The atom didn't care which way it was used. It was humanity's intentions that made the difference. And that's where the great ethical debate began to simmer. Not in secret labs anymore, but in public squares and living rooms. People protested nuclear testing, worried about fallout drifting across oceans. Scientists signed petitions. Ordinary citizens wore badges reading "Ban the Bomb." The 1963 Partial Test Ban Treaty tried to limit atmospheric tests, but underground ones continued for decades. You're sitting in a cafe somewhere in the late 1960s. Newspapers spread across the table. On one page, a photo of an American family smiling beside their backyard fallout shelter, just in case. On the next, a headline about a new nuclear power station bringing jobs to the region. Hope and fear share the same column inches. It's surreal. A quirky cultural footnote. Nuclear themes even seeped into pop culture. Comic books created radioactive superheroes. Cereal boxes offered atomic energy rings. One toy company sold a children's science kit with actual uranium samples. It was called the Gilbert U-238 Atomic Energy Lab, and yes, it came with a Geiger counter. Parents loved it until someone read the fine print. By now, you begin to sense the deeper rhythm of this story, the dual nature of nuclear power. It's always two things at once, healer and killer, light and shadow, promise and peril. Every new invention comes with its reflection, every breakthrough with its curse. You think back to the Curies, glowing with wonder and radiation in equal measure, to Oppenheimer, watching the Trinity fireball and whispering scripture, to the engineers at Fermi's pile, building hope in the darkness under a football stadium. All of them chasing the same spark, none of them sure what it would set ablaze. Historians still debate what drives that pursuit. The thirst for understanding, the hunger for control, or perhaps the simple inability to leave a mystery unsolved. You suspect it's all three. Humanity's greatest strength and weakness is its curiosity. Once a door appears, we open it, even if it leads straight into the sun. You pause outside a nuclear plant at night, its cooling towers exhaling pale steam under a moonlit sky. The hum of turbines vibrates through the ground like a heartbeat. Inside, a controlled storm of neutrons keeps entire cities alive. Standing there, you realize that this shimmering contradiction is what defines the nuclear age. The fire that once annihilated Hiroshima now powers refrigerators and streetlights. The same science that melted sand into trinitite now sterilizes medical equipment and scans bones for tumors. Humanity has turned apocalypse into infrastructure. And yet, the risk, the memory of what this power can do, never truly fades. You can almost hear Oppenheimer's voice again, faint and regretful. Now I am become death. But maybe, just maybe, we've also become something else. Creatures capable of wielding fire without being consumed by it. Maybe you wake to the low hum of a different world. One powered by reactors instead of furnaces. One patrolled by submarines that never surface, their hearts beating with the steady rhythm of fission. The Cold War has entered its long, tense middle act. You are now surrounded by symbols of control, stability, and quiet terror. Missile silos hidden under cornfields, warheads sleeping in steel coffins at sea, and control rooms that glow softly with green lights even at 3 in the morning. You're standing inside one such room now. Los Alamos again, years after the war. But the mood has changed. Gone are the chaotic chalkboards and sleepless improvisation. Everything is orderly, sealed, institutional. Scientists have traded cigarettes for clipboards. They're no longer trying to invent the bomb. They're perfecting how to live with it. You glance over their shoulders and see diagrams of the nuclear triad. 3 distinct arms of deterrence. Land-based missiles, submarine launch missiles, and strategic bombers. Together, they form the unholy trinity of modern military doctrine, designed so that even if one leg is destroyed, the others can retaliate. It's like a 3-headed dragon, each head sleeping with one eye open. The land-based missiles are the most obvious. Those towering intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs, kept in underground silos. They're called Minutemen, not because they're fast, but because their operators can launch them in under a minute. From silos in Montana, Wyoming, and North Dakota, they can strike targets halfway across the planet in less time than it takes to microwave popcorn. Then there are the bombers, massive aircraft like the B-52 Stratofortress, cruising endlessly in the skies. They carry gravity bombs, each one capable of turning a metropolis into glass. The pilots live with paradox. They're trained to deliver the end of the world, but their highest hope is never to take off for real. And finally, the most chilling component, the submarines. Nuclear-powered, nearly silent, they glide beneath the oceans, unseen and undetectable. Each carries dozens of nuclear warheads, enough to end civilization several times over. These are the doomsday machines in all but name. Even if every city and command center on Earth were obliterated, these subs could rise from the deep and finish the job. A quirky tidbit. During the Cold War, some submarines stayed submerged for months without surfacing. their crews isolated from the world. When they finally emerged, the sailors would sometimes discover that entire governments had changed, or that new wars had started and ended, while they drifted silently beneath the waves. Historians still argue whether the nuclear triad was a masterpiece of deterrence or a monument to paranoia. It worked, technically. No nuclear war ever began, but it also institutionalized the idea that survival depended on perpetual readiness to die. You walk down a narrow corridor beneath a missile silo. The air smells of machine oil and cold concrete. Red lights flash intermittently, bathing the walls in pulses of warning. Two young officers sit in front of identical consoles, keys around their necks. You realize those keys, when turned together, could end life as you know it, and yet they look almost bored, trading jokes, sipping coffee, checking their watches. Apocalypse has become routine. This is the psychological heart of the Cold War, the normality of catastrophe. Every nation with nuclear weapons lives in a constant state of potential self-destruction, and yet, life goes on. People marry, watch TV, and worry about grocery prices while missiles wait quietly under their feet. You think of a moment in 1983, a close call that nearly rewrote history. A Soviet officer named Stanislav Petrov sits in a bunker near Moscow when alarms start blaring. The radar screens show multiple American missiles inbound. Protocol says he must retaliate immediately, launch a counterstrike. The world teeters on the brink. But Petrov hesitates. The readings seem off. He decides it's a false alarm. And he's right. A satellite had mistaken sunlight glinting off clouds for missile launches. One calm decision saves the planet. Historians still argue whether Petrov acted on instinct, training, or sheer luck. But his story reveals how fragile deterrence really is, how the fate of billions can hinge on one person's doubt. You rise from that bunker and step back into daylight. The Cold War still stretching ahead like an endless chessboard. Governments test new delivery systems, MIRVs, multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles, each missile carrying 10 separate warheads, SLBMs, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and experimental neutron bombs, designed to kill people but leave buildings intact. The vocabulary of annihilation becomes a bureaucratic dialect. Meanwhile, propaganda keeps the fear alive. School children practice duck and cover drills under their desks. Adults build fallout shelters in basements stocked with canned beans and playing cards. One civil defense film assures families that radiation can be washed off with soap and water. Another cheerfully suggests, after a nuclear blast, wait 2 weeks before resuming normal activities. You can't help but laugh darkly. A quirky footnote. In the 1960s, Las Vegas actually advertised atomic tourism. Hotels offered mushroom cloud breakfasts, where guests could watch test detonations from rooftop patios while sipping orange juice. Humanity never loses its flair for irony. Still, beneath the absurdity, the fear is real. Every new test pushes nerves tighter. In 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis brings the world within a heartbeat of disaster. Soviet missiles appear in Cuba. American warships encircle the island. For 13 days, the planet holds its breath. Nuclear submarines lurk under the Atlantic, and fighter jets circle the Caribbean skies. At one point, a US destroyer drops practice depth charges near a Soviet sub whose captain, believing war has already begun, orders a nuclear torpedo prepared. Only one officer's refusal prevents the launch. The ocean itself seems to shiver. When the standoff finally ends, both sides claim victory, but everyone understands how close they came. The phrase brinkmanship enters the lexicon, the art of approaching annihilation without falling in. Afterward, leaders signed more treaties: the Hotline Agreement, a direct phone link between Washington and Moscow, the Partial Test Ban Treaty, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. They promised restraint, But the arsenals keep growing. By the 1980s, the United States and the Soviet Union together hold more than 60,000 nuclear warheads, enough to destroy the planet several times over. No one can even agree on how many times over is too many. Historians still argue whether that overwhelming arsenal actually kept the peace. The logic was simple. If both sides could obliterate each other instantly, neither would dare to strike. But logic and fear rarely stay in perfect balance. Computers malfunction. Commanders misinterpret data. Birds are mistaken for bombers. The entire structure depends on fallible humans never making a single mistake. And yet, for decades, it holds. Somehow, improbably, it holds. You walk through the corridors of Nord, deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain, the nerve center of America's early warning system. Giant screens show maps of the world, dotted with blips and arcs. The hum of machines fills the air like a heartbeat. One officer notices you staring and grins. If these lights ever stop blinking, we've got bigger problems than electricity. It's gallows humor, but it's how people cope. You realize that in this subterranean temple of vigilance, faith has replaced fear. Faith in systems, in codes, in the idea that reason will always prevail. But faith, like uranium, has a half-life. You glance up at the monitors one last time before leaving, thinking about how fragile the balance remains. One spark, one misstep, one human error, and all those diagrams and doctrines dissolve into fire. Above ground, the sun sets behind the Rockies, turning the clouds gold. You think about how beautiful that light is, how peaceful, and you remember that it comes from the same nuclear reactions, the same fusing atoms that humans imitate in their weapons. It's humbling and a little terrifying to realize the sun itself is both our ancestor and our rival. Somewhere, deep in an ocean trench, a submarine prowls silently, its warhead slumbering. Somewhere else, a reactor hums, turning that same deadly principle into electricity that powers a hospital. The duality continues, undiminished. You close your eyes and listen. The world is still ticking, still holding its breath. You step away from the world of submarines and silos and feel the temperature shift. The air smells less of oil and steel now, more of ozone and salt. It's the dawn of a new phase, the moment when nuclear energy stops belonging only to generals and physicists and starts flowing into power lines, factories, and homes. The atom, once chained to war, begins to whisper promises of peace. It's the 1950s and 1960s, and the world has fallen in love with the phrase, atoms for peace. You see the posters, smiling families, tidy lawns, glowing reactors in the background like friendly lighthouses. The propaganda is almost charming, atomic optimism with a mid-century haircut. In the United States, President Eisenhower announces that the destructive power of the atom will be dedicated to the needs of mankind. The subtext is obvious. Don't fear the bomb. Embrace its brighter twin. You walk through one of the new nuclear power stations. Tall, elegant cooling towers breathing white clouds into a spotless sky. Inside, turbines hum with the sound of controlled miracles. Engineers in crisp uniforms boast of efficiency and safety. No smoke, no coal, no endless barrels of oil, one of them tells you. Just clean energy, straight from the nucleus. It's true. Each tiny uranium pellet holds as much potential as tons of coal. Fission has become an industrial heartbeat, clean and quiet. Ships, submarines, and eventually entire fleets of power plants now run on this bottled lightning. Humanity, it seems, has tamed the fire. But you know better. You've seen what happens when the fire escapes. At first, though, optimism wins. The U.S. Navy leads the charge, launching the USS Nautilus, the first nuclear-powered submarine, in 1954. It can remain underwater for months, prowling silently through oceans that once limited sailors by air and coal. Later, the USS Enterprise, the first nuclear aircraft carrier, set sail in 1961, powered by 8 reactors. Each represents a new frontier: endurance without refueling, power without smoke, strength without pause. You imagine standing on the bridge of that carrier at night. The deck glows under floodlights, the sea stretching, endless and dark. Below you, the reactors hum steadily, turning seawater into steam, steam into motion, motion into dominance. Nuclear propulsion, it turns out, isn't just about energy. It's about control. Whoever commands the atom commands the oceans. A quirky fact: early in the nuclear navy days, some sailors joked that the ships ran on bottled demons. One officer supposedly carried a lead brick in his quarters, claiming it made him feel closer to the heart of the ship. Whether true or not, the myth captured the mixture of pride and unease that still clung to nuclear power. Historians still argue whether these programs were about innovation or intimidation. After all, every nuclear submarine also carried warheads. Even in its peaceful applications, nuclear technology refused to shed its military shadow. Still, the civilian industry kept growing. By the 1970s, hundreds of reactors powered cities from California to Kiev. France made a national strategy of it, le nucléaire, transforming itself into an energy superpower. Japan, Britain, and Canada followed suit. For a while, nuclear electricity became the symbol of progress. You stroll through one of those plants at full capacity. The control room feels like a spaceship, panels of dials and lights, operators murmuring into headsets. A wall chart shows radiation levels barely above natural background. Everything is stable, safe, predictable. The reactor core sits beneath hundreds of tons of shielding, where uranium atoms split neatly in half, releasing energy that heats water, spins turbines, lights homes. It's hard not to feel awe at the sheer precision of it. Human beings, fallible, impatient, occasionally brilliant apes, have built a machine that can imitate the stars and not destroy itself in the process. But there's that shadow again, the waste. Every few years, the reactors shut down to refuel, leaving behind spent uranium rods still humming with radioactivity. They glow faint blue in cooling pools, beautiful and lethal. Some will remain dangerous for longer than recorded human history. Where do you put something that outlasts your civilization? Governments try everything, burying it in salt mines, encasing it in glass, sealing it in casks, and sinking it beneath mountains. Yet every plan feels temporary, like sweeping a tiger under the rug. The problem of nuclear waste becomes the world's longest-running to-do list. Still, people believe. Through the 1960s and early 1970s, nuclear energy becomes almost fashionable. Power companies promise that electricity will soon be too cheap to meter. City billboards show families watching TV under slogans like, "The atom keeps us warm." Some countries even propose nuclear-heated swimming pools and underground greenhouses in Arctic towns. And then, inevitably, something goes wrong. It starts small. A valve sticks here, a coolant pump jams there. At 3 Mile Island, Pennsylvania in March 1979, a series of mechanical failures and human errors lead to a partial meltdown. The reactor core overheats, pressure builds. For tense hours, no one knows whether it will explode. Thousands flee, imagining another Hiroshima. The worst doesn't happen, but trust is broken. A quirky footnote: officials held press conferences to assure the public everything was fine while venting radioactive steam into the atmosphere behind them. The irony wasn't lost on reporters. Historians still argue whether 3 Mile Island marked the beginning of the end for nuclear optimism. The incident caused minimal physical harm, but it shattered public confidence. Protests spread. Films like The China Syndrome dramatized meltdown fears. Suddenly, the word nuclear no longer meant futuristic. It meant frightening. Yet, in other corners of the world, nuclear energy kept growing. The Soviet Union, for instance, expanded its reactor program rapidly. Its engineers built the RBMK series, massive, graphite-moderated reactors designed for both power generation and plutonium production. Cheap, efficient, and, as it turned out, dangerously unstable. But that's a story for later. For now, you stand in the late 1970s, watching humanity balance on the knife's edge of innovation and anxiety. The world has seen both sides of the atom's coin. Cities lit with clean energy, and cities erased by fire. The question that began in the desert of New Mexico still lingers unanswered. Can we control what we've created, or are we merely pretending? You visit a nuclear training center, watching young engineers practice emergency drills. Alarms wail, red lights flash, and trainees shout readings, pressure, temperature, containment integrity. It's all simulated, but the tension is real. You can see it in their eyes. Faith in the system, yes, but also fear of what happens if the system fails. One instructor leans toward you and mutters, half-jokingly, "Everything's fine," until it isn't. That's the rule of the atom. You walk outside as dusk settles. The plant's cooling towers loom against the horizon, exhaling plumes that catch the sunset and turn rose gold. It's peaceful, too peaceful. Somewhere behind that serenity hums a reaction that could light half the state or, under the wrong circumstances, reduce it to cinders. You think about all the paradoxes that define this age. The submarines that never surface yet protect peace. The bombs that prevent wars by existing. The reactors that promise eternity but leave poisons for millennia. Nuclear technology has become the mirror of humanity itself, capable of brilliance, bound by folly. Historians still argue what the nuclear age truly means. Is it the proof of our genius or evidence of our hubris? Did we conquer nature or simply borrow its power without permission? The answers flicker like radiation counters, steady, uncertain, never quite zero. As you walk away, the hum of the reactor fades behind you, replaced by the sound of crickets and the faint sigh of wind across power lines. Each wire carries invisible energy drawn from atoms split thousands of times per second. You look up at the night sky, stars burning with the same kind of fury, and can't help but smile at the symmetry. Somewhere out there, light born of fusion travels across galaxies. Down here, on a fragile blue planet, humanity has learned to imitate it, half terrified, half proud. The line between creation and destruction has never been thinner or more astonishing. The hum of reactors fades, and the silence that replaces it feels heavier than sound itself. You're in the mid-1980s now, and the world has started to learn that even the best containment plans sometimes leak. It happens suddenly, at 1:23 a.m. on April 26, 1986. A quiet Ukrainian night turns into the brightest dawn Europe has ever seen. You're in Pripyat, a model Soviet city built to serve the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. People are asleep in their pastel apartment blocks when Reactor 4 ruptures, the turbine hall trembling like a heart under stress. In seconds, the roof is gone, and a column of fire lances into the sky. The air glows blue. Graphite blocks, chunks of the reactor's core, scatter like coals kicked from a bonfire. The control room smells of ozone and panic. Engineers shout over alarms, trying to make sense of readings that don't make sense at all. Radiation levels too high to measure. The night shift supervisor, Anatoly Dyatlov, insists it's just a hydrogen explosion. Outside, firefighters arrive without protective gear, spraying water on what they think is an ordinary blaze. Within hours, their skin reddens and blisters. By morning, many are dying of acute radiation sickness. You step through the wreckage as dawn breaks. Dust drifts like snowfall, soft and deadly. Children play beneath it the next morning, chasing glowing specks that settle on swings and rooftops. No one tells them to go inside. the evacuation order won't come for 36 hours. Historians still argue whether the disaster was the fault of reckless operators or a flawed reactor design. The truth, as always, lies somewhere in between. A dangerous technology wrapped in bureaucratic denial. A quirky, grim detail. After the explosion, soldiers were sent to shoot pets left behind in Pripyat to prevent contamination. Some of those dogs' descendants still roam the exclusion zone today, shaggy ghosts guarding the ruins of the nuclear age. The radiation plume drifts across Europe, Finland, Poland, even Britain, carried by wind and rain. Governments scramble to measure fallout, while Soviet officials insist everything is under control. A Swedish monitoring station, hundreds of miles away, is the first to sound the alarm to the world. For months, helicopters drop sand, boron, and lead onto the open reactor, trying to smother the fire. Pilots fly so close to the core that their skin peels beneath their suits. Below, workers known as liquidators shovel radioactive debris by hand, each allowed only 90 seconds on the roof before their exposure reaches lethal limits. They joke grimly that they're sacrificing minutes for millennia. In the end, engineers entomb Reactor 4 in a concrete sarcophagus, a tomb for technology itself. But the sarcophagus cracks, leaks, and must be replaced decades later with a new steel shelter large enough to fit the Statue of Liberty inside. Even now, the melted fuel still smolders in the dark, a sleeping dragon that may need watching for 20,000 years. You leave the zone and find the world changed. The glossy optimism of the atomic age has curdled into dread. Environmental movements surge. Nuclear plants face protests everywhere from Germany to California. Some countries freeze their reactor programs entirely. For the first time, the atom's promise seems outweighed by its peril. Then, just as the scars begin to fade, the Earth shakes again. This time literally. March 11th, 2011. A massive earthquake hits Japan, followed by a tsunami that devastates the coast of Fukushima. You watch from a hillside as walls of water swallow entire towns, tearing cars from roads and dragging fishing boats onto rooftops. Among the wreckage stands the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant. At first, its emergency systems hold. Then, the backup generators, built to power the cooling pumps, are drowned by seawater. Within hours, heat builds inside the reactors. Steam hisses from ruptured pipes. Workers in white suits sprint through corridors that feel more like tunnels in a sinking ship. Over the next days, 3 reactor cores melt down. Hydrogen explosions rip apart the outer buildings. The sky fills with another invisible enemy: cesium, iodine, xenon. A quirky side note, one group of elderly Japanese volunteers, calling themselves the Skilled Veterans Corps for Fukushima, offered to work inside the radiation zone so younger engineers wouldn't have to risk their lives. "We're already old," they said. "We can't reproduce, and we've lived long enough to know why this matters." Humanity, for all its flaws, never runs out of quiet heroism. Historians still debate which disaster was worse: Chernobyl's immediate firestorm or Fukushima's drawn-out poisoning of air and sea. Chernobyl spewed more radiation. Fukushima contaminated oceans and economies in ways harder to measure. What they share is psychological fallout, the deep, collective fear that even in peacetime, the atom can betray you. You wander through an abandoned Japanese town months later. Weeds poke through asphalt. Vending machines still hum faintly, powered by distant grids. Paper cranes hang in windows, yellowed by rain. A clock on a classroom wall is frozen at the minute the tsunami struck. There's no need to wind it again. Time stopped here for good reason. After Fukushima, governments everywhere reevaluate nuclear policy. Germany announces a total phase-out. Italy holds a referendum to ban reactors altogether. Other nations, like France and the US, double down, insisting that the alternative, coal and climate change, is worse. The debate fractures along familiar lines: progress versus precaution, survival versus risk. Still, not all is despair. In laboratories, new designs begin to emerge. Generation 4 reactors, small modular reactors, and thorium fuel cycles promising cleaner, safer energy. Engineers dream of fusion, the holy grail, the same process that powers the sun, but without long-lived waste. Each breakthrough feels like an apology for the last failure. A curious experiment unfolds in the 2020s at facilities like ITER in France and NIF in California, where scientists focus laser beams the size of cathedrals onto tiny fuel pellets, trying to ignite miniature suns. For a few billionths of a second, they succeed. Enough energy to power a city bursts forth, then collapses. The scientists cheer anyway. Even failure in nuclear research glows faintly with hope. Historians still argue whether the future of energy lies in these controlled stars, or whether humanity will finally decide that fire, in any form, is best left to heaven. You step back and look at the long arc from 1945 to now, from desert fireballs to glassy exclusion zones to sterile laboratories glowing blue. Each chapter of this story feels like a pendulum swing between faith and fear. Yet through every disaster, one truth endures. We keep trying. We learn, rebuild, and redesign. Because giving up on knowledge feels like a greater danger than the atom itself. You remember Szilárd's warning. Great power imposes the obligation of restraint. It echoes differently now. The obligation isn't just restraint, it's remembrance. Every gleaming reactor and polished control room sits atop invisible tombs of the past. Chernobyl, Fukushima, Hiroshima. Forgetting them would be the final meltdown. As night falls over Fukushima's coast, you look toward the Pacific. The sea is calm again, as if nothing ever happened. But beneath its surface, tiny traces of cesium still drift with the currents, a reminder written in the language of half-lives. The glow has faded, but it's not gone. Neither, perhaps, is hope. You sit quietly for a while, watching the waves on the Japanese coast flatten into a mirror. It's strange how quickly the world learns to move on, how catastrophe becomes a headline, then a paragraph, then a ghost. But the story of the atom never really pauses, it just changes tone. The mushroom clouds of the mid-century shrink into cooling towers and lab experiments, yet the same flicker of power still waits inside every uranium pellet, every isotope vial, every policy debate. By the 1990s, the Cold War is over. The Berlin Wall has fallen, the Soviet Union dissolves, and humanity dares to exhale for the first time in half a century. You're standing in a warehouse in Kazakhstan, watching soldiers load rusty nuclear warheads onto trucks. They are being dismantled under the Nunn-Lugar Cooperative Threat Reduction Program, an initiative to secure and dismantle old Soviet weapons before they can fall into the wrong hands. One by one, missiles that once aimed at American cities are cut apart, their uranium cores stored like relics. It feels hopeful, almost holy, but as the doors close, you realize the math hasn't changed. The material is still out there, thousands of tons of it. The genie is still very much alive. In the decades that follow, the world's relationship with nuclear technology grows complicated. On one hand, there's the dream of clean energy. On the other, the lingering nightmare of weapons and waste. You see both currents at once. Power plants expanding in Asia and the Middle East, and treaties like START 1 and New START trying to reduce stockpiles in the West. Yet progress moves unevenly, and the old doctrines never quite die. A quirky fact: in the 1990s, much of the electricity used in the United States literally came from dismantled Soviet bombs. Under a program called Megatons to Megawatts, uranium from decommissioned warheads was downblended into fuel for civilian reactors. For nearly 20 years, 1/10 of America's power came from what had once been pointed at it. Humanity, it seems, found a way to turn apocalypse into amperage. Historians still debate whether that era was the safest the world has ever been, or merely the calm between storms. Because even as arsenals shrank, new anxieties took their place. Rogue states sought their own bombs. Terrorist groups dreamed of dirty bombs, crude devices that could scatter radioactive dust through city streets. The nuclear age hadn't ended. It had simply gone underground. And yet, amid all that unease, nuclear energy staged a quiet comeback. Climate change entered the conversation, and suddenly, the atom's reputation began to soften. You find yourself at an environmental conference in the 2000s, surrounded by wind turbines and solar panels, but in one corner, a booth hums with talk of zero-carbon baseload energy. The very word nuclear, once synonymous with annihilation, is being rebranded as salvation. You run your fingers over a small metallic cylinder on display, a fuel rod assembly, gleaming under glass. The sign beneath it reads, "One rod can power a city block for a year." The presenter, a young engineer, explains how new reactor designs shut themselves down automatically if overheating begins. "We've learned from the past," she insists, with the unflinching optimism of someone who hasn't read much history. Still, you can't help but admire the determination. The latest small modular reactors, SMRs, promise to be safer, cheaper, and easier to build. Some even float on barges far from population centers. Others use thorium instead of uranium, reducing long-term waste. Humanity hasn't given up on the atom. It's just trying to make peace with it. You visit one such prototype deep in the Arctic Circle, where Russia launches its first floating nuclear plant, the academic Lomonosov. Engineers in parkas check instruments while auroras shimmer overhead. The sight is absurdly poetic, a ship carrying a miniature sun through seas of ice. The locals joke that it's Chernobyl on water, but they still draw power from it. A curious tidbit: some of the same nations leading clean energy summits are also quietly modernizing their nuclear arsenals. The duality persists. One hand builds reactors for hospitals, the other for missiles. The world has learned to live with contradiction as comfortably as it once lived with fear. Historians still argue whether nuclear deterrence remains necessary in the 21st century. Some call it an obsolete relic. Others say it's the only reason no great power war has erupted since 1945. The numbers fluctuate, but the logic of mutually assured destruction still hums in the background like the baseline of civilization itself. Quiet, constant, impossible to forget. Meanwhile, nuclear technology keeps branching into new, stranger forms. Hospitals use isotopes to sterilize equipment and diagnose disease. Archaeologists date ancient bones using radiocarbon decay. Food companies zap grain with gamma rays to kill pests without chemicals. Radiation, the invisible terror of the mid-century, has become an everyday utility, as ordinary as electricity. You walk through a hospital's oncology wing. Behind heavy lead doors, machines hum softly, firing precise beams of cobalt radiation into tumors smaller than a coin. Patients lie still, the treatment measured in millisieverts. The same energy that leveled cities now saves lives every minute. The symmetry feels cosmic. A nurse tells you a story. The paint on old radiation therapy machines used to glow faintly blue from scattered Cherenkov light, so patients called them angels. That glow, once a symbol of danger, became a sign of healing. Historians still debate whether this transformation represents redemption or irony. Maybe both. You shift scenes again to a dig site in Egypt, where archaeologists carefully unearth linen-wrapped remains. They send samples to a lab, where carbon-14 dating determines the mummy's age within a century. Without radioactivity, much of human history would remain guesswork. The same force that could erase civilizations also helps us remember them. Meanwhile, in industrial yards, inspectors use gamma radiography to check the integrity of bridges and pipelines, peering through steel without cutting it open. The invisible has become a tool rather than a threat. It's hard not to be impressed by our ability to repurpose danger into progress. Though it also feels a little like juggling grenades for art. You walk outside and realize how far the world has come from the days of Trinity and Nagasaki. Nuclear power now supplies roughly 10% of the world's electricity. France still runs mostly on reactors. Finland, China, and South Korea build new ones. Even in countries that once swore them off, whispers of revival return as climate targets loom. The atom's glow, dimmed by decades of fear, is flickering back to life. And yet, the moral unease never disappears. Every reactor hums beside the memory of Chernobyl. Every treaty signing carries the shadow of mushroom clouds. We're like magicians who can't stop performing a trick that might kill the audience. A quirky scene unfolds at a science museum. A family watches a model reactor demonstration. The guide cheerfully explains neutron moderation to children while parents snap photos. In a nearby exhibit, a piece of trinitite, the fused desert glass from the first bomb, sits in a glass case. The contrast is jarring. Destruction and discovery inches apart. You think of all the people who touched this story along the way. Curie with her glowing samples. Fermi beneath his football stands. Oppenheimer quoting scripture. Sakharov regretting his creation. The engineers of Fukushima staring at gauges while the sea roared outside. Each of them lived inside this paradox. Awe and fear intertwined. Knowledge always slightly ahead of wisdom. Historians still argue what the nuclear age really means. Was it humanity's coming of age, or a prolonged near-death experience? Perhaps both. But the simple fact remains, we now share the planet with our own invention. The sun rises because hydrogen fuses. Our lights glow because uranium splits. The universe itself has no moral stance on either. It just burns, quietly, endlessly. As night falls over the decommissioned missile fields of North Dakota, you stand on the empty prairie. The silos are sealed now, their lids welded shut. Grass grows where once stood the engines of annihilation. Overhead, satellites trace thin silver lines through the stars. Somewhere far above, one of them carries a miniature nuclear power source, keeping its instruments alive in the cold vacuum of space. Even beyond Earth, the atom hums. The wind rustles through the grass. You imagine the sound as the slow ticking of a Geiger counter. Steady, faint, eternal. Civilization's heartbeat, measured in half-lives. The prairie fades, and you find yourself back in motion, riding the slow current of history toward the present day. You can almost hear the hum of a reactor beneath your feet, and faintly, the echo of missiles that no longer launch. The nuclear age has changed its costume again. It's quieter now, almost polite, but beneath the surface, the logic that once threatened the world still whispers. Keep the balance, or lose everything. You're sitting in a Cold War museum, one of those polished bunkers turned tourist attractions. School children peer through glass at missile consoles and radiation meters. A cheerful guide explains the term mutually assured destruction with the confidence of someone reciting a fairy tale that used to be true. You can't help smiling. It sounds absurdly civilized now, as if apocalypse were a solved problem. But you know better. The logic of deterrence, of if you strike, I strike back harder, never went away. It just went digital. Today, the launch keys are algorithms, satellites, and cyber defenses. The old red telephones have turned into encrypted chat lines. The doctrine still stands, only dressed in fiber optics. You step into a command center simulation. The screen flashes DEFCON2. Missile trajectories appear on a map. The instructor's voice is calm, reassuring. The system will prevent unauthorized launches, he says. It's built with redundancy. But you remember the stories, the near misses, a Norwegian weather rocket mistaken for an ICBM, a computer chip glitch that reported 2,000 phantom warheads, the officer who refused to press the button because it didn't feel right. The difference between civilization and ash often came down to a gut instinct. A quirky anecdote. In 1979, NORAD accidentally inserted a training tape into its live detection system. The screen suddenly showed hundreds of inbound missiles, Fighter jets scrambled. Nuclear bombers were armed. Only after frantic phone calls did someone realize the apocalypse was, quite literally, a simulation file. It's one of those moments that makes you want to hug every skeptical officer who ever double-checked a blinking light. Historians still argue whether the nuclear peace of the last 70 years was stability or luck, whether deterrence truly worked, or whether we simply rolled dice and kept getting sixes. Maybe both. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The bomb may have prevented global war, but it also froze the world into permanent anxiety. For decades, international diplomacy revolved around who had how many warheads, who could reach whose capital, and who would blink first. The nuclear triad became not just a defense strategy, but a psychological one. A monument to fear so vast it somehow maintained peace. You picture those three pillars again: the land-based missiles, the bombers, the submarines. Each represents not just a weapon, but an idea. The missile stands for speed, the ability to end a war before it begins. The bomber stands for choice, human control in an automated system. The submarine stands for inevitability, the promise that no matter what happens, someone, somewhere can still retaliate. Together, they form a macabre kind of poetry. And yet, for all its dread, that poetry worked. There were no world wars after 1945. No nuclear weapons used in anger again. The apocalypse became background noise, humming just beneath the surface of ordinary life. You remember growing up under that hum? The drills, the films, the slogans. Duck and cover. Peace through strength. It was absurd and sincere all at once. You'd watch cartoons on Saturday morning, and then a public service announcement about fallout shelters. The same television that sold cereal also sold existential dread. And yet, people lived, laughed, built families. The Cold War didn't freeze the world entirely. It only made everyone slightly paranoid. You can almost hear the cultural echoes of it still. In spy thrillers, in synthwave music, in the blue glow of nostalgia that romanticizes an age when the end of the world at least had good design. But underneath the pop culture lies the real machinery of survival. Treaties, verification satellites, back-channel diplomacy. The Non-Proliferation Treaty of 1968 tried to draw a line in the sand. Only 5 countries, the US, USSR, UK, France, and China, would possess nuclear weapons, while others would promise restraint. In exchange, the nuclear powers would help spread peaceful atomic energy. The balance was fragile, but for a time, it held. A quirky footnote. By the 1970s, nuclear testing was so common that seismologists could identify a country's test site just by the signature of the shockwave. Scientists joked that they had turned the planet into one giant drum, tapping it occasionally to make sure it still rang. Historians still argue whether these treaties genuinely limited proliferation or simply codified inequality, allowing the big powers to keep their arsenals while preaching restraint to everyone else. But in the grand scheme, the system did its job. The club stayed small, even if exclusivity came at a moral cost. Still, the edges frayed. India tested its first bomb in 1974, calling it a peaceful nuclear explosion. That's like describing a gentle punch to the face. Pakistan followed in 1998, racing to match its rival. Israel built its own in quiet secrecy. North Korea, decades later, joined the club with fireworks and famine. Each new detonation reminded the world that knowledge, once shared, can't be unlearned. You visit one of those test sites, a stretch of desert where the sand still glitters faintly from heat fused into glass. The wind blows softly through cracked bunkers, carrying the smell of dust and history. A sign warns of radiation, but the Geiger counter in your hand clicks lazily. Time has dulled the danger, though not the memory. Nearby, you find a half-buried plaque quoting a physicist from the early days. "We thought we were learning how the world works. What we learned was how to end it. You sit on a rusted steel girder and stare at the horizon. There's beauty in the emptiness, a terrible peace. You think about the irony that these wastelands, once symbols of annihilation, are now among the quietest, most untouched places on Earth. Nature, indifferent as ever, has reclaimed them. Birds nest in control towers, wildflowers bloom beside crater edges. The planet, at least, seems better at forgiveness than the species that scorched it. Then your thoughts drift to the other side of the nuclear coin. The peaceful uses still expanding, quietly, persistently. By the 2000s, nuclear medicine becomes essential for diagnostics and cancer treatment. Isotopes illuminate brain scans, target tumors, and sterilize surgical equipment. Every major hospital hums faintly with controlled radiation. The same elements once feared as poison now act as healers. A quirky tidbit. Some early radiation therapists in the 1950s tested their machines on themselves to calibrate dosage. One proudly declared, "If my hair doesn't fall out, it's safe for patients." Spoiler, his hair did fall out. Historians still argue whether humanity's embrace of nuclear medicine redeemed the atom's reputation or merely distracted us from its darker legacy. Perhaps both truths coexist. The radiation that kills cells is also what saves lives. It's all in the dosage. You find yourself standing in a hospital corridor again, listening to the low buzz of an MRI machine. The patient inside lies still, unaware that the same physics guiding this scan once guided missiles. The technician, tapping keys gently, is part of a lineage stretching from Curie's Paris lab to Fermi's pile to Los Alamos and beyond. Every click of the keyboard echoes with history. Then, back outside, you tilt your head to the sun. Its warmth feels comforting, but you remember, it's nuclear too. Every sunrise is a hydrogen bomb operating in perfect stability. The same fire that threatened us for decades also keeps us alive. That's the paradox in its purest form. We are children of the atom, warmed by it, frightened of it, forever orbiting its light. As night falls, you watch city lights blink on, each bulb powered, somewhere down the line, by the same fundamental reaction. Atoms splitting, releasing heat, turning turbines. The world glows softly, unaware of the irony. You take a breath, long and quiet. The hum you've followed since New Mexico has changed tone over the decades, from blinding fireball to subtle vibration. It's less roar now, more whisper, but it's still there, threading through every reactor, every hospital, every memory of light. Maybe that's what the nuclear age really became. Not a story of fear or triumph, but one of endurance. Humanity didn't master the atom so much as learn to live beside it, like a neighbor both fascinating and dangerous. And as the stars appear overhead, distant, steady, burning with the same fusion we still chase, you realize that perhaps the lesson was never about destruction or salvation at all. It was about humility. We've learned to carry fire without being consumed, barely, but enough to keep walking. You stand there for a long while, staring at the horizon where the last sunlight dissolves into dusk. The hum of the power grid vibrates faintly through the soles of your shoes. If you didn't know better, you might mistake it for silence. But that low, steady thrum is civilization's pulse, and, in no small part, the atom's heartbeat. The late 20th and early 21st centuries are strange, paradoxical decades for nuclear energy. The same world that once built fallout shelters now quietly relies on nuclear reactors for nearly 10% of its electricity. The Cold War's twin demons, fear and fascination, have mellowed into something subtler, uneasy dependence. You wander through a modern nuclear plant. The architecture is antiseptic and serene. All white walls and clean corridors. No roaring furnaces, no plumes of smoke, just the soft hiss of steam and the rhythmic clicking of control panels. In the core room below, rods of enriched uranium glow faintly beneath meters of water, a sapphire light born from charged particles moving faster than light can travel in that medium. It's called Cherenkov radiation, and it looks like bottled lightning. Contained peace. An engineer beside you leans on a railing and says, almost proudly, "Each of these rods will run for years before we change them." Then he shrugs. "Of course, when we do, the waste will outlive our grandchildren." His tone carries that familiar blend of awe and resignation, the same tone scientists have used since the Trinity test. Historians still argue whether nuclear power is humanity's best hope against climate change or a slow-motion act of hubris. The arguments are passionate and endless. One side insists that fission is the cleanest, densest energy source ever harnessed. Zero carbon emissions, minimal land use, almost no fuel required. The other side warns of risk, of meltdowns and political instability, of what happens when a system designed for perfection meets the imperfection of humans. You can see both sides too clearly. On one hand, you imagine cities bathed in endless clean light, carbon-free grids humming quietly while forests regrow and oceans cool. On the other, you imagine that one misstep, a software glitch, an earthquake, a human error, and the world turns gray again, blanketed in invisible poison. A quirky tidbit. Some engineers propose building nuclear batteries, tiny sealed reactors that could power whole neighborhoods for decades without maintenance. They'd be factory-built and delivered like appliances. A few prototypes already exist, humming quietly in research labs. It's as if humanity wants to make peace with the atom by shrinking it, taming fire by turning it into a household gadget. Meanwhile, across the ocean, France remains the poster child for nuclear efficiency. More than 70% of its electricity comes from reactors, and the French even export power to their neighbors. Streets of Paris glow with energy from atoms split hundreds of kilometers away. In Finland, a massive underground repository called Onkalo is being carved into bedrock to store waste safely for 100,000 years, an act of geological humility. In the United States, debates rage about reviving nuclear plants shut down after the 1980s. "We need them," one senator insists on TV, "if we want to save the planet." Historians still argue whether saving the planet with the same force that once threatened it is poetic irony or cosmic justice. Probably both. You passed a group of university students touring the facility, notebooks open, faces glowing with curiosity. They talk about molten salt reactors, thorium cycles, and fusion, the elusive dream of clean, limitless energy. One of them, eyes bright behind safety goggles, says, "Fusion isn't if anymore, it's when." You admire the conviction. Optimism is the fuel of science. Let's pause on that word, fusion. Unlike fission, where atoms split, fusion joins them, mimicking the process that powers stars. It's the universe's oldest trick, the cosmic heartbeat that forged every element in your body. Scientists have chased it for nearly a century, building colossal machines that look like metallic suns trapped inside donut-shaped prisons called tokamaks. In a cavern in southern France, the ITER project rises, a collaboration of over 30 countries, its goal as audacious as it is poetic, to recreate the sun on Earth. Inside, powerful magnets will squeeze hydrogen isotopes so tightly that they fuse, releasing energy without radioactive waste, without meltdown risk, without guilt. You watch workers welding massive coils, each taller than a house. They talk casually about magnetic fields strong enough to lift aircraft carriers. The math is so delicate that one misaligned bolt could ruin years of work. Still, there's a quiet reverence in the air, as if everyone here knows they're building something mythic. A quirky note: when the first fusion experiments briefly succeeded, sustaining reaction for mere seconds, the scientists played Beethoven's Ode to Joy over the loudspeakers. Joy indeed, in miniature suns. Historians still argue whether fusion will ever become commercially viable, or whether it's humanity's favorite mirage, always 30 years away. But maybe the chase itself matters. It's a reminder that curiosity doesn't quit. even when logic says it should. You step out of the research complex and look up. The evening sky glows faintly orange, streaked with contrails. Somewhere out there, satellites powered by tiny nuclear generators circle Earth, feeding signals for GPS, weather, communication. Humanity has learned to send fragments of the atom's light into orbit. And that's the quiet miracle of this century. Nuclear energy has gone cosmic again. Not as bombs, but as beacons. The Voyager probes, still drifting beyond the solar system, carry small plutonium-powered hearts that beat once per second, sending whispers of data across billions of miles. When those signals reach us, they carry not just information, but proof that something built by human hands still glows out there, in the dark. It's a strange kind of poetry. The same element that destroyed Hiroshima now powers humanity's longest message to the stars. But down here, the contradictions remain. Nations still test ballistic missiles. Old warheads still sit in silos, modernized for the digital age. New doctrines like limited nuclear exchange or tactical deterrence creep back into military vocabulary, as if history weren't warning us loudly enough. A quirky side story. In 2020, an American commander accidentally left his nuclear launch card, his literal authorization code, at a dry cleaner. It was retrieved quietly, but the symbolism lingered. Civilization sometimes entrusts eternity to pockets. Historians still debate whether human systems are truly capable of managing infinite risk. One scholar famously called nuclear deterrence the most successful accident in history. It's hard to disagree. You walk now through a city lit by nuclear-powered grids, yet shadowed by nuclear weapons. The same light that keeps the hospitals running could, under different orders, erase them. It's like living in a world where angels and devils share the same heartbeat. And yet, people laugh, fall in love, drink coffee under these lights, oblivious to the paradox humming beneath. Maybe that's what makes humanity resilient. The ability to normalize the unbearable. You can't live every day remembering that the sky could catch fire. You just pay the electric bill and hope the reactors hold steady. As you cross a bridge, you see your reflection ripple in the water below. For a moment, the city lights shimmer like 1,000 tiny suns, each one a little echo of fusion, a reminder that creation and destruction have always danced together. The atom doesn't moralize, it simply is. The rest is up to us. And so the world keeps humming. Power plants keep spinning. Reactors keep burning quietly. Their heat turning turbines, their turbines turning light. Somewhere, a physicist works late, fine-tuning magnetic fields. Somewhere else, a diplomat signs a new treaty. Somewhere, a farmer looks up at the same sky that once burned over New Mexico and sees only stars. The story of nuclear power has always been one of contradictions that somehow coexist. Fire and light, destruction and discovery, fear and fascination. And maybe that's the point. The atom doesn't resolve those contradictions for us. It just mirrors them back. What we see depends entirely on which side of the glow we stand. You wake before dawn to a low electric hum and the hiss of rain against metal. The world outside your window glows pale blue, each droplet catching light from the sodium lamps powered by the very thing you've spent all night thinking about: controlled fission. There's something almost biblical about it. This quiet warmth drawn from the heart of matter. This modern-day Prometheus bargain that never really stops burning. You pour coffee and step outside, where the city still sleeps beneath the weather. The air tastes faintly metallic, ozone from distant transformers. Somewhere in the dark, a nuclear plant is feeding power into the grid, electrons coursing invisibly through wires like a bloodstream. You realize every light in every kitchen, every train, every server farm running the world's digital nervous system, each might trace its lineage back to a neutron nudging another apart. Humanity lives by the rhythm of the chain reaction, but today, the rhythm falters. Across the headlines, another debate has erupted. Some governments announce plans to double their nuclear capacity by 2050 to meet carbon goals. Others renew vows to abandon it completely. Climate activists are split right down the middle, half holding placards reading "Nuclear saves the planet," half shouting "No more Chernobyls." You listen to both sides and find yourself torn. The first group speaks of physics and pragmatism. No other energy source delivers so much power with so little carbon footprint. The second invokes memory, the ghosts of Pripyat, Fukushima, and Hiroshima, reminding everyone that low risk doesn't mean no risk. The debate has become more than policy. It's philosophy, ethics, and emotion all tangled together. Historians still argue whether the 21st century will be remembered as the age humanity finally forgave the atom, or the one that quietly buried it. Both futures seem plausible from where you stand. You visit a new reactor site, a sleek, modular facility rising beside a river. Instead of the monumental concrete domes of the 1960s, these are compact and almost elegant, built in sections like giant puzzle pieces. The chief engineer greets you with a grin that belongs more in a tech startup than a power plant. "It's not your grandfather's nuclear," he says, tapping a holographic display of the core. "Fully automated shutdown, passive cooling, no human error required." You smile at his confidence. It reminds you of every scientist before a breakthrough, and every one before a disaster. Inside, the hum is steady, reassuring. You peer through reinforced glass into the control room, where a dozen operators watch monitors rather than machinery. Everything glows green and calm. One screen displays real-time radiation levels, decimals flickering harmlessly low. Another shows weather patterns for miles around, the invisible environment constantly measured, tamed, translated into numbers. A quirky note: one of the younger technicians has pinned a photo of Marie Curie above her console, captioned in marker, "The original influencer." You chuckle, but there's truth in it. Every person in this room stands on the shoulders of that single spark of curiosity. Curie's glowing vials, Fermi's graphite pile, Oppenheimer's trembling voice. The engineer points to the hologram again. "You see this?" he says. "These reactors can't melt down in the old way. If power fails, the reaction stops itself." His voice carries pride, but also something else, maybe relief. You wonder if he sleeps better believing that. Historians still argue whether technology truly evolves beyond its past or just disguises it. The newer the machine, the older its ghosts. You leave the control room and walk along a catwalk overlooking the containment vessel. The air smells faintly of coolant, sharp and sterile. Beneath you, invisible reactions tick endlessly. Tiny suns chained within steel. You think of the first chain reaction in that Chicago basement, of graphite and uranium glowing faintly under dim bulbs, and how far humanity has traveled since then. The scale has changed. The awe remains identical. Outside, the rain has stopped. Steam rises from the plant's cooling towers, white plumes curling upward like incense from a mechanical temple. It feels almost sacred, and in a way it is. Each plant is a shrine to the human desire to harness the universe itself, to turn chaos into comfort, death into power, light into life. But as you drive away, a news alert pings your phone. Nuclear plant protest blocks highway in Germany. Another headline follows. Fusion breakthrough declared energy positive for 5 seconds. Progress and resistance, hand in hand, like two dancers who can't quit each other. That's the nuclear story in miniature. 5 seconds of success, 50 years of debate. A quirky side tale. In one small desert town near an old test site, locals hold an annual festival called Trinity Days. They sell atomic chili, host glow-in-the-dark fun runs, and even crown a Miss Fission. What began as gallows humor has become tradition, a reminder that humans can adapt to anything, even existential dread, by adding music and funnel cake. You arrive at a decommissioned reactor museum later that week. The guide, an elderly man who once worked there, tells you how strange it felt to power down a machine designed to run for centuries. "It's like putting a dragon to sleep," he says, looking at the sealed core behind glass. You're glad it's safe, but you miss the rumble. Historians still argue whether shutting down reactors is progress or retreat. To some, it's prudence. To others, cowardice. What no one denies is that each closure leaves a silence behind, a hole in the grid, a lull in ambition. You wander into a darkened exhibit room. Behind plexiglass, artifacts glow softly. A lump of trinitite, a faded Los Alamos ID badge, a radiation detector from Chernobyl still ticking faintly. A plaque beneath it reads, "Measured in becquerels, remembered in heartbeats." The museum's last room displays a single quote projected across the wall in looping white text. "Man has harnessed the atom. Now he must learn to harness himself." Beneath it, a photograph of Leo Szilárd, weary-eyed and unshaven. The words linger long after you've walked away. You drive into the countryside. It's late afternoon. The clouds have cleared. In the distance, high-voltage towers march across the fields, carrying invisible power from unseen sources: wind, coal, fission, fusion. The air hums faintly. A farmer waves at you from his tractor. You wave back, thinking how this quiet normalcy, the ability to plant and harvest without fear, is the true measure of progress. A quirky observation. Many of those transmission towers still carry tiny radiation warning signs, not because the wires are dangerous, but because the world learned to mark its fears as carefully as its boundaries. You stop at a roadside cafe. The waitress, cheerful and tired, refills your cup and asks where you're headed. You tell her you're following the history of nuclear power. She laughs softly and says, "Well, honey, I hope you find the end of it." You smile and stir your coffee. "I think the end of it might be the end of us." She considers that, nods, and tops you off again. "Then I'll pray you don't finish your trip." Outside, twilight deepens. Streetlights blink to life one by one. Tiny suns powered by the same ancient fire born in the hearts of stars. The wind smells of wet soil and ozone. You breathe it in and realize something that has taken the world a century to understand. The story of nuclear power isn't a chapter, it's a mirror. It reflects exactly who we are: curious, brilliant, reckless, hopeful. The hum of a reactor somewhere miles away becomes, in your imagination, the heartbeat of civilization itself. Steady, fragile, necessary. You climb back into your car, headlights cutting through the rain-misted road. In the rearview mirror, the cafe sign glows faintly. Open 24 hours. And you can't help but think that, in its own way, so is the atom. The rain fades into memory, leaving the world rinsed clean and glimmering beneath dawn. You drive through the countryside toward a small research facility perched on the edge of a lake. From a distance, it looks like any other industrial complex. Metal roofs, a water tower, fences. But as you get closer, you see something different. No smokestacks, no roaring turbines, just quiet hums and silver pipes curving like veins around a metallic heart. This is one of the new generation of nuclear labs, fusion testbeds, where scientists chase the oldest dream in the universe, to create a miniature sun on Earth. You're greeted by a young researcher wearing safety goggles and a grin that could light its own reactor. She waves you inside and proudly gestures to a glowing, ring-shaped chamber encased in magnets. "We call it Stellarator 3, she says, "our star maker." Inside the chamber, hydrogen isotopes spin at millions of degrees, trapped by magnetic fields stronger than gravity. The particles smash together, fusing, releasing bursts of energy before cooling again. It lasts only a fraction of a second, but that moment is enough, a promise made visible. She laughs softly. "You're looking at what might power the next 1,000 years. Then she adds, "Or the world's most expensive light bulb." Depends who you ask. Historians still argue whether fusion is salvation or self-delusion. For decades, it's always been 30 years away. Yet here, under sterile white lights and the faint scent of ozone, you can almost believe it's closer than ever. A quirky tidbit: to keep hydrogen plasma stable, the magnetic field must be so precise that even a stray fingerprint on the containment chamber can throw off calculations. Scientists polish the metal with gloves, like jewelers preparing a cosmic necklace. One researcher once joked that we spend billions to make plasma, and millions more to keep dust from sneezing on it. You stand beside the viewport, watching the pale blue halo flicker. It's oddly hypnotic, both gentle and immense. For a moment, you forget that this light could someday replace coal, gas, even fission. It's just light, simple and pure. The kind that has burned at the center of every star since the dawn of time. The researcher leans beside you. "It's strange," she says. "We started with fire, then steam, then oil, then atoms. And here we are, right back where it all began, the sun." You nod. The symmetry is poetic, almost too neat. Humanity spent centuries learning to control destruction, and now it chases the most creative force of all. But you can't help wondering, if we finally master the power of stars, will we use it wisely, or find another way to turn light into shadow? She walks you to a hallway lined with photographs, black and white images of every major milestone: Fermi's graphite pile, Oppenheimer's Trinity test, Curie's lab, Chernobyl's sarcophagus, Fukushima's flooded turbines. Beneath each, a small plaque quotes a scientist from that era. One near the end catches your eye. "There is no such thing as pure energy. There is always a cost. The universe makes sure of it." You step outside. The air is crisp, the lake like glass. The facility's reflection ripples on the surface, its white towers bending with each gust of wind. It's peaceful here, deceptively so. You imagine the generations who will inherit whatever happens inside that building. The engineers, the dreamers, the caretakers of fire. You wonder if they'll still remember the dangers, or if comfort will dull the lessons learned in smoke and ash. Historians still argue whether technological optimism is bravery or arrogance. Perhaps it's both. The same impulse that drives explorers into storms and artists into madness. The same impulse that made Marie Curie carried glowing test tubes in her pockets because she wanted to see what the dark was hiding. As the morning sun climbs higher, you drive toward the city again. Skyscrapers gleam on the horizon, powered by unseen reactors. Along the highway, billboards advertise next-gen nuclear energy. Safe, smart, sustainable. The marketing tone feels almost absurd after the deserts and ruins you've walked through. Yet you find yourself smiling. Hope sells. At a red light, your eyes catch a newsstand headline. AI predicts fusion power by 2040. Next to it, another reads, War Games Simulation tests new tactical nukes. You shake your head. One article dreams of eternal energy. The other rehearses instant extinction. The headlines might as well be two sides of the same coin. You stop for coffee in a city cafe buzzing with students. On the wall above the espresso machine, a mural shows an atom splitting into light that transforms into wind turbines and solar panels. At the center of the design, a small inscription reads, "Energy is memory made visible." You stare at it for a while. The phrase feels truer than the artist probably intended. Every joule of power humans use comes from something ancient. Coal made from dead forests, oil from prehistoric oceans, fission from stars long extinct. Energy is history itself, replayed as heat and motion. You sip your drink, listening to the murmur of conversation, languages blending, devices charging, laughter rising. This is what all those experiments, detonations, and treaties were really about, preserving the right for ordinary mornings to exist. The reactor, the lab, the fallout, the fear, all so that someone, someday, could sit quietly in a cafe and forget the story behind the hum. A quirky observation. The smartphone in your pocket uses a trace of tantalum mined in regions that were once sites of uranium extraction. The power grid feeding the cafe may run partly on nuclear electricity. Even the GPS satellite guiding you here runs on plutonium decay. The atomic age isn't a chapter you leave behind. It's the wallpaper of modern life. Historians still argue whether this normalization of nuclear technology is triumph or tragedy. Have we finally integrated the atom into everyday existence, or simply stopped thinking about it? Maybe forgetting is the only way humans can live beside something so powerful. As afternoon fades, you walk through a park overlooking the city. Kids play soccer, their shouts carrying over the breeze. A couple picnics beneath a willow. Above them, a drone hums faintly, its battery charged by the same grid that hums from reactors miles away. The air feels almost too normal, as if the planet itself has decided to forgive everything. You remember the deserts where it all began. The Jornada del Muerto, the journey of the dead man, where Gadget first exploded in light and fury. You wonder what those scientists would think if they could see this, a world powered by the very principle that once threatened to erase it. A small plaque near the park's fountain catches your eye. It quotes Oppenheimer again, though this time not the famous line about death and destruction, but one less known. The physicists have known sin, and this is a knowledge which they cannot lose. You sit on the fountain's edge and watch ripples shimmer across the water. Knowledge, once gained, never disappears. It only changes shape, sometimes into fire, sometimes into light. The atom's story, you realize, is also humanity's confession. Our intelligence outpacing our wisdom, our guilt becoming innovation, our innovation breeding new hope. The sun begins to set, the skyline catching its glow. The color looks eerily like the first milliseconds of a nuclear flash. Brilliant, silent, absolute. For a moment, you can't tell whether the world is burning or just beautifully alive. Somewhere far away, deep underground, uranium atoms are still splitting, turning heat into motion, motion into power, power into comfort. Somewhere even farther, in a chamber wrapped in magnets, hydrogen nuclei are trying to merge, to glow, to become stars. And in between, in cities, deserts, and forgotten fields, people live, laugh, and sleep under the steady hum of energy that began with one blinding flash in 1945. You close your eyes and listen to that hum. It's no longer terrifying, just steady, like breath, like continuity. Night settles softly over the city, that familiar quiet hum beneath it all. A civilization powered by things invisible and half understood. You find yourself wandering toward the river, where the skyline glows with 1,000 points of light, each one a small defiance against darkness. Neon signs flicker, boats drift past with lanterns strung like fireflies, and for a fleeting second, the reflection on the water looks like a galaxy fallen to Earth. You think, all of this rhythm of light, this effortless modernity, exists because someone, somewhere, learned how to break the atom without breaking the world. Yet the world still trembles a little when it remembers how close it came. The nuclear story, you realize, isn't about science anymore. It's about stewardship. The physics are easy, the responsibility isn't. You walk along the promenade. A group of young activists hand out flyers for a climate rally. Their banner reads, "Split atoms, not the planet." The irony makes you smile. You take a flyer anyway, reading lines about renewable energy, reactor safety, and the looming deadlines of climate collapse. Every generation rediscovers the same paradox. The only fire bright enough to save us is the one we barely trust to hold. Historians still argue whether nuclear power and climate change are enemies or allies. One side sees reactors as ticking bombs. The other sees them as the only realistic bridge to a carbon-free future. The debate feels endless, circular, and deeply human. Two truths orbiting the same dilemma, never colliding, never quite parting. You stop at a small memorial near the river's edge. Bronze plaques list the names of scientists who worked on the Manhattan Project. Many later became advocates for disarmament. Someone has left a candle beneath Oppenheimer's name. Its flame wavers in the breeze. barely holding on, like the balance it symbolizes. There's an inscription carved below. We built it because we could. Now we must live because we must. You linger there, tracing the words with your eyes. The sentence is simple, but it feels heavier than all the textbooks combined. A few blocks away, a museum is hosting an exhibit called Atoms in Everyday Life. Inside, children press buttons that light up maps of where radioactive isotopes are used in medicine, agriculture, industry, archaeology. A cheerful guide explains how gamma rays check airplane parts for cracks and sterilize surgical equipment. In a corner display, a placard reads, "Radiation, from fear to familiar." It's strange, watching children giggle at the word that once froze nations in fear. You think back to 1945, when radiation meant death, when men in lead suits swept debris from ruins that glowed faintly in the night. And now, it's a science fair word, written in friendly fonts, paired with cartoon atoms and smiling suns. Humanity, it seems, has domesticated dread. A quirky detail catches your eye. A small collection of atomic-age toys from the 1950s. Glow-in-the-dark ray guns, cereal box atomic rings, even a miniature junior scientist reactor set. The guide laughs when she notices your expression. People thought it was the future, she says. Turns out they were right, just not the one they imagined. She isn't wrong. We did inherit their future, one that glows at night and hums beneath our feet, half promise, half warning. Outside again, the moon hangs low and bright, reflected in the water like a coin flipped by some cosmic gambler. You walk past newsstands displaying two headlines side by side. Fusion breakthrough reaches record output. Defense pact upgrades nuclear arsenal. You don't need to read the details. You already know the story. Progress and peril are roommates that never stop arguing. Historians still debate whether deterrence ever truly made sense. Whether a peace founded on mutual annihilation is peace at all. Yet somehow, it worked. The 20th century ended without the mushroom clouds many expected. Maybe that's why the 21st is so uneasy. We've survived the impossible once, and now we can't decide what to do with the reprieve. You wander into a quiet district where the streetlights give way to rows of modest homes. In one window, an elderly man watches television. In another, a teenager scrolls through their phone. The glow from those screens, faint and constant, feels like an echo of the same light that once burned above Hiroshima. A smaller, gentler offspring of the same idea. You remember reading that after the Trinity test, the scientists held their breath, waiting to see if the atmosphere would ignite? For a few seconds, they believed they might have destroyed the sky. And now, here we are, lighting the night deliberately, casually, safely, most of the time. A quirky footnote. One physicist at Los Alamos had bet a case of whiskey that the explosion wouldn't ignite the atmosphere. He won. He never drank it. He said it felt like bad luck. You pause under a bridge where the hum of the city softens into the steady churn of water. It's peaceful here. The sound reminds you of the Geiger counters from documentaries. Steady, patient clicks. The rhythm of life, or decay, depending on how you listen. Then you spot a mural sprayed across the concrete wall. Bright blues and oranges depicting a child holding a glowing atom like a balloon. Beneath it, in looping handwriting, "What we hold, holds us." That line stays with you. The atom doesn't just live in laboratories or reactors. It lives in metaphors now, in art and fear and memory. It has become shorthand for humanity's dual nature, ingenious and reckless, creative and destructive, endlessly curious. Historians still argue about when the nuclear age truly began. Was it when the first atom split? When the bomb fell? When the first reactor powered a city? Or perhaps when humanity stopped seeing the atom as a miracle and started treating it as a mirror? You walk on, thinking of all the ways that mirror has reflected us. The atom showed us that power could be infinite, but control never is. It proved that the universe isn't something separate from us. We're made of the same stuff, bound by the same rules. It also showed how easily those rules can be broken. You find a bench overlooking the river and sit. Across the water, you can see the faint silhouette of a decommissioned power plant, its cooling towers dormant. Ivy creeps up its sides now, softening its outline, reclaiming its hardness. Nature, patient and tireless, doesn't care what humans build. Give it time, and it grows over everything. Silence over steel. A quirky observation. Scientists studying the Chernobyl exclusion zone discovered that wildlife there thrives. Wolves, eagles, even wild horses. The radiation didn't sterilize the land. It scared humans away, giving nature a rare break. Life, it seems, tolerates radiation better than bureaucracy. You smile at the irony. For all our fear of extinction, life keeps finding ways to adapt to the mess we make. The atom can scorch a city, but it can't stop a blade of grass. The river ripples in the night breeze. Across its surface, the city's lights shimmer like radioactive decay. Bright at first, fading with distance, half-lives of illumination. You think about how energy, like memory, never really disappears. It just changes form. Maybe that's true of consequences too. Historians still debate what the lesson of the nuclear age really is. Some say it's restraint, to fear the fire enough never to unleash it again. Others claim it's perseverance, to keep refining the tool until it serves life instead of death. Maybe it's simpler. Maybe it's just awareness that every decision, no matter how small, radiates outward farther than we imagine. You rise and start walking back toward the city. The wind picks up, carrying the faint smell of rain again. Overhead, power lines hum softly, their rhythm syncing with your footsteps. You realize that sound, the hum of invisible energy, is the lullaby of the modern world. It's the quiet we've chosen to live with, the price of our light. Somewhere, deep in the desert, pieces of trinitite still glint beneath the sand. Somewhere else, scientists polish mirrors for a fusion reactor. And here, by this river, a lone candle still burns for Oppenheimer, flickering in the night wind but refusing to die. You exhale and smile. The glow remains. You wake to morning light spilling through the curtains, that thin golden hue that always feels like a quiet promise. For a moment, you forget where you are. Hotel room, city skyline, the faint hum of power behind the walls, and then it comes back to you. The story, the journey, the atom. The pulse of humanity woven through every spark and silence. Downstairs, the lobby television murmurs headlines. Nuclear energy gains new momentum amid global climate goals. UN summit discusses disarmament. Fusion test surpasses record ignition levels. It's the same news you've heard all week, just rearranged. Progress and paranoia, hand in hand. You step outside and breathe in air that feels almost unreal in its ordinariness. Cars pass, street vendors unwrap their stalls, and children in backpacks wait for buses. The world keeps spinning, powered by an invisible network of reactors, cables, and compromises. It's humbling how normal it all seems. You walk toward a nearby science museum where a new exhibit has just opened. From atom to future, a century of nuclear power. The building's entrance is shaped like a stylized atom, spherical lights orbiting steel pillars, and families pose for photos beneath it. Inside, the lighting is dim, the air cool, and the sound of footsteps echoes faintly, like in a cathedral. The first display greets you with a looping film of the Trinity test, the same blinding flash that started this long, looping story. You've seen it 100 times. Grainy footage, silent light blooming into fire, but it never stops feeling cosmic. The crowd watches in hushed fascination. A small boy whispers, "That's beautiful," and his mother shushes him gently, unsure whether that's the right word. The next gallery shifts tone. Panels explain how nuclear power plants work, animated diagrams of fuel rods, control rods, and turbines turning steam into electricity. The narration is calm, precise, even soothing. The displays have a museum's confidence, as if the story has already ended, its chaos safely sealed behind glass. But you know better. History doesn't end. It just changes vocabulary. You pause before a model of Chicago Pile 1, Enrico Fermi's crude yet miraculous reactor. The label reads, First Controlled Chain Reaction, December 2nd, 1942. You run your fingers lightly across the glass, imagining that subterranean space under the bleachers of Stagg Field. Scientists counting neutrons with pencils and intuition, holding their breath as graphite bricks and uranium spheres began to whisper energy into existence. No one knew for sure if it would stop, and yet they pressed on. A quirky tidbit appears on a plaque nearby. During the experiment, a safety protocol involved one man holding a bucket of cadmium salts on a rope. If anything went wrong, his job was to pour it into the reactor. You imagine explaining that to modern engineers? An emergency plan powered by hope and a rope? Historians still argue whether courage or recklessness defined that moment. Maybe both, but without it, there would be no light in this room, no exhibit, no hum beyond the walls. The next section of the museum is quieter, darker. It's titled The Price of Power. Behind heavy glass cases lie artifacts, melted wristwatches from Hiroshima, twisted rebar from Chernobyl, a child's toy found near Fukushima. Each object glows faintly under ultraviolet light, ghostly and fragile. Visitors move slowly, almost reverently. You feel the weight settle in your chest, the reminder that progress always leaves shadows. A recording plays in the background. Leo Szilārd's voice, soft and accented, saying, "We must learn restraint or perish from our own cleverness." His words feel less like a warning and more like a sigh. And then, as if to balance the ledger, the final gallery bursts into brightness. Atoms for Humanity. Displays show how nuclear medicine detects tumors, how radiocarbon dating unlocks ancient timelines, how cosmic detectors trace the origins of galaxies. There's even a touchscreen showing the Voyager probe, still whispering from deep space, powered by the steady decay of plutonium. You stand there for a long moment, staring at the tiny golden image of that spacecraft, a fragile, lonely messenger carrying the sounds of Earth across the void. Music, laughter, a baby crying, the rustle of wind in trees. Proof that even in our most destructive century, we still remembered how to sing. A quirky detail, the Voyager message includes greetings in 55 languages, but not a single one mentions the atom. Perhaps we wanted to greet the universe as children, not as sorcerers. Historians still argue whether that omission was humility or denial. But as you watch that probe drift endlessly through the dark, you think, maybe it was hope. Maybe it was our way of saying, we are more than our weapons. You leave the museum just as evening returns. The city lights flicker on again, running on a mix of solar, wind, and nuclear, the unholy trinity of modern energy. You walk through a park where a bronze sculpture of Marie Curie stands, smiling faintly, a stylized atom hovering in her outstretched hand. The plaque beneath her reads, "Nothing in life is to be feared. It is only to be understood." The air is cool, electric with the smell of rain on concrete. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbles. You tilt your head up and think about how even lightning is nuclear at heart. Atoms splitting, electrons colliding, power released in a blink. Energy, it seems, has always been our oldest language. You walk on, passing a man playing cello beneath a bridge. The melody is low and haunting, echoing through the arches like the drone of turbines. The musician nods as you pass. "Beautiful night," he says. You smile. "And borrowed light." He doesn't ask what you mean. Maybe he doesn't have to. As you reach the water again, you realize the city itself is the perfect metaphor for the nuclear story. Glittering, restless, both miraculous and precarious. Every lamp, Every phone, every heartbeat that depends on electricity is an act of faith in something we barely control. Historians still debate whether humanity will ever outgrow that paradox. Whether we'll someday look back at fission and fusion the way we look at fire, as primitive beginnings. Maybe we will. Maybe the future will belong to sunlight, hydrogen, or something not yet named. But the lessons of the atom will endure. That power is never free, that understanding demands humility, and that creation and destruction are twins, sharing the same spark. You stand at the edge of the river, where reflections shimmer in long ribbons of gold. Somewhere out there, deep beneath oceans, submarines still glide with nuclear hearts. Somewhere in orbit, satellites still hum on radioactive decay. Somewhere underground, old warheads rust in silos, dreaming of relevance. And somewhere, in labs bright as dawn, hydrogen still whispers to hydrogen, trying to become a sun. The world hums quietly around you, a living testament to the fact that we survived ourselves. So far. You close your eyes and imagine that hum as a heartbeat, slow and patient, a promise between generations. Don't forget what we learned. And for the first time tonight, you feel a kind of peace. Not the peace of ignorance, but of recognition, that we are creatures capable of both ruin and redemption, often in the same gesture. The atom only magnified what was always true of us. You whisper into the evening air, almost a prayer. May we keep the light and lose the fire. The city hums its answer back. The night deepens. The hum fades into something softer, almost a lullaby. You breathe slower, letting the rhythm of the world settle into you. Think of it. All of human history condensed into this quiet glow. Cave fires, oil lamps, steam engines, reactors, and now, the quiet pulse of invisible atoms keeping the darkness at bay. We've always chased the light, sometimes too recklessly, sometimes too well. But tonight, it feels enough to just bask in it, to recognize how fragile, how miraculous, how earned this brightness really is. Somewhere far beneath you, deep in the earth, spent fuel rods rest in their concrete tombs, still warm, still whispering. Somewhere far above, a probe sails through interstellar night, carrying our voices toward unknown suns. Between them drifts the fragile ribbon of human life, suspended between caution and wonder. You think of Curie's patience, Fermi's precision, Oppenheimer's regret, Szilárd's warning, all those hands that reached into the atom's heart to see what burned there. You think of the survivors, the builders, the engineers, who now carry that same flame more carefully. And you think of yourself, standing here, breathing in a world lit by their questions. The wind off the river is cool. Streetlights shimmer through the mist. Somewhere nearby, someone laughs softly. Proof, in its simplest form, that the world endures. You close your eyes. The hum steadies. The light holds. For now, that's enough. Sweet dreams.